are live. Hello, Earthlings.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Welcome to the Animal Rights Show. I hope everyone is fine. We have a special guest to talk about his new book, Jordi Casamitjana. So, Jordi, welcome.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having me. It's quite exciting to be here.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for coming on.
It's nice to have a guest who's excited instead of bored. So
Well, that might change, but at the beginning, I'm excited.
So Philip got here first. Wendy, Philip from
New York,
and then Carol was second, and then I think there's just a lot of chat. And there's that Tucson one again that got me last
Deb,
time.
that's
Deb.
Welcome, Deb.
Deb, and we got Carolyn as well.
That's Deb, isn't it?
Jennifer.
Yeah, just to confuse me, there's Jennifer. Yeah. The elf hat, indeed. Yes.
The elf hats.
Right.
Does that bell ring? Does it ring when you do that?
I think the microphone.
It rattles. It doesn't ring.
I see.
What kind of bell is that if it doesn't ring?
Yeah, cheapo stuff. I suppose it's supposed to ring. There's something in it, I think. Anyway.
The sound cancelling thing is stopping it to be heard. So.
Maybe.
Least of our worries whether my dings or not. Right. So here we are. So we're going to be talking about your book, of course, Jordi, and Nella is going to kick us off.
That's the book.
That's
yes,
the book.
let's see the book first.
And we've got that as well.
Yep.
Yay.
That's handy.
Like.
Yep.
So
handy.
Really handy.
You go into your local
Literally.
bookshop, you know what to look for.
So let's start from the beginning, the dedication page. And
Right.
I actually love the dedication, and you've dedicated the book to all those who kept saying no. And
Right.
I wanted to ask you, you've been vegan for a quite long time. Do you think that during this time, saying no became easier or harder? Now veganism is mainstream, but on the other hand, we witness the rise of the right in many countries. Any attempt to be part of a social movement that opposes any kind of oppression is met with increasing state violence. Do you think that all this makes saying no harder, or that maybe people adopt veganism but they dilute it, kind of veganism that looks less political, that is stripped from its radical nature?
I think you're right. I think it's harder now, although it goes in cycles. I think it's not that just going to be harder and harder forever. I think we have periods where it's easier to say no, other periods it's easier to say yes. I think we are in a period that is easier to say yes than no at this moment. In general, not just about veganism. So nobody wants to commit themselves to say no to anything. They all say perhaps, they all say maybe, they all say let me think about it. But no, as I say in my book, there's a whole chapter about that word. It's the most powerful word that exists. It's the first attempt of communication that you had when you were born. I'm sure that was saying no. So the first time that somebody was trying to give you some food you didn't want, you could not speak, you could only cry, but the cry is through the world. But when you communicate it to someone specific, you move your head. No, I don't want this. And that was the beginning of a human being communicating. And I think that's the beginning of a sentient being communicating. A sentient being is somebody who has the capacity to suffer, but especially because it can experience positive and negative experiences through the senses, and the nervous system can process it and say, I don't want this, I'm going to move there. Or I like this, I'm going to stay here. So no is the first, any creature that is able to say no is a sentient being. So for me, it's such a fundamental thing that we always going to have that power to say no. But there are societies over the years that makes it more difficult to say no. They want you to confirm. And we are in one of those moments. vegans, not just in general politically, but I think in the movement as well. A movement with a lot of other movements that have been telling us, don't say no, say reduce, don't say no, say maybe, and that's not helping. But doesn't mean that we have to change. We need to keep saying no, even if nobody or fewer people believe us or hear us. Still, our job as a vegans is keep saying no. Does it answer your question?
Yes, very well.
Just picking up on the no thing, actually, if you don't mind. Roger, I know you've got something as well. Is it all right if I jump in?
You can't. No.
You cannot. It was really interesting, actually, reading this. I really liked this chapter because it kind of made me think about how with human nature, we often will know what we don't want way before we know what we actually do want. We often just tune into that a lot more easily, don't we? And then I really liked the way it brought the attention to how importantly that it's our fellow animals are saying no all the time. And it kind of really brought that over when you were saying about how we're saying no as vegans, but actually our fellow animals are saying no continuously, and they're just not being heard or not being listened to or acknowledged. And that I think that was a really important thing for us to remember. And yeah, we can know something that we don't like, we don't prefer, and we don't often know the solution. It reminds me, actually, and Roger, you might be able to say more about this way more than me, obviously, because it reminded me of Herbert Marcuse and The Great Refusal, and that radical concept of protesting against that which is obviously the status quo for us as vegans. But then I've just got a question about all of this, which there's a quote from Mother Teresa that apparently she said, "I will never attend an anti-war rally. If you have a peace rally, invite me." And it just made me think about, she was obviously saying she wants to fight for something rather than against something. And I just wonder, do you think that it's also important that we have a positive vision of what we're aiming towards rather than just what we're moving away from and saying no to?
Yes, I think it's important, but I think we fall in too easily into a marketing jargon and doctrine that it says, be positive, be positive. If your message is not positive, people are not going to buy your product. And I think that might work in marketing, but I think running a movement through marketing rules is a mistake because they operate in different ways. And I think it's the opposite. A movement has to be far more negative than positive to be a movement, because people are not going to move their asses off the chair if anything is okay, if anything is satisfactory. And the other way to say is not satisfactory is say no. It's the most black and white way to say it. Anything that is not no might be interpreted as perhaps a little bit satisfactory. You cannot be gray in this area. You have to be very emphatic in what you no means no. And if you notice all the movements we have at all levels, human or otherwise, the problems arise when there is pragmatism that removes the strength of the word no and starts to put other words inside, and people get confused. They don't know what they're fighting for because we simplify it. So the positive thing is always good strategically to know what are you saying yes to, but in communication, through movement, through getting people mobilized, is better to say no, because that is what at least people stop and pay attention when you say no. And then when the attention is on you, then you can say, where are we going? But if you don't stop them doing what they're doing, they're not going to listen the positive message, because you got to go, as everything is so positive. Everything, it's like when somebody in America, you go and you go to a shop and say, have a wonderful day. And you don't hear it anymore because it's a positive, meaningless message. If somebody said, oh, you have something wrong in your jacket, you immediately pay attention to. So the no is much more powerful. And I hear all these positive, and that's the reason I wrote the article. The article was, I wrote it because a reaction of me of an excess of positivism in marketing that was getting into campaigning and movements to the point that I was diluting the message, because our message is a very no message.
So we're kind of almost tuning into human nature in terms of let's point out the injustice, what's wrong. Let's point out what we're trying to stop happening, and get their attention, because I think that does get people's attention quite well. Like you.
And in the book, I deconstruct the official definition of veganism, showing that it's no. That is the most important verb as a negative or a qualification of a verb is a negative element. So negativity is built in veganism, and that's not a bad thing. That's my argument. That's a good thing. That's a powerful thing to have for a movement. So.
Mm-hmm. Bit like negative rights as well. Made me think of that.
Yeah.
Well, I suppose I might
what was your
with my no question, perhaps. Because this is quite an amusing part, actually, Jordi, because you said when you first went vegan, you ended up going up and down supermarket aisles loudly proclaiming no, and you would pick up products which you already knew were not vegan friendly in order for you then to say no. So
correct.
Like an art form. I just have this kind of vision of you charging up and down these supermarket aisles, kind of screaming.
I loved it. I love to do it, and I sometimes I was, if I was hungry and I knew what to eat, I control myself because I wanted to spend at least an hour saying no to other things before eating the thing I already knew I wanted to eat, because that's what empowered me. Because for me, that was the most interesting experience, internal experience when I became vegan, because everything was very intellectualized, obviously, and I was working in animal protection already for years. So I realized that I had not said no for so many years that I should have said no, that I felt that I owe many no's to the world. So I had to accelerate my negation to cruelty and exploitation and abuse and use by verbalizing it. And then it became a kind of a bit of an addiction for a few weeks, because then I could not I cannot eat my meal in a satisfying way without having said no a little bit before. But then later on, I kind of understood why I was doing it. And that is when it became even more satisfactory, because I understood that I was getting it. I was getting the whole idea was not about me eating plants. The whole idea is about me rejecting animal use. So.
Mm-hmm. The man who couldn't stop saying no. There could be a whole story in that, couldn't there?
Yeah.
Indeed.
Yeah. Love it.
But also because I think veganism, compared with other beliefs and philosophies, is a very black and white philosophy. That's why the cover of my book is black and white. That's on purpose. I wanted to subliminally keep saying it's all black and white. Either we use the animals or we don't. So we can't just have to do it. And I think it's like no and yes. These are the two black and white options. And so yes to fellow animals, freedom and rights. No to use and exploitation. And that's it. Anything else is variations around this basic message.
I think Debbie's asking whether you ever got thrown out of the grocery shops.
No, I did. That's a good question, because I didn't shout, really. People look at me because I was saying it in a somber way to myself, like no. So people had a lot of ideas about the state of my mind, and I'm sure that gave me a little bit of distance between me and the rest of the customers.
Which is what you want, especially at this time here with all the bugs about, isn't it? You know.
Exactly. Yeah.
Viruses and like that. I mean.
But I was living in Brighton. There was a relatively vegan place, so that means. People kind of didn't care that much about what I was doing, because they were quite liberal and allow everybody to do what they want to do.
Yeah, definitely. Just moving on to kind of the start of your book, you frame it around 5 axioms. And actually, we spoke about this previously, really, really briefly when we were doing our little tea
Walking with vegans,
Walking with vegans, and you came for tea. And it was really interesting actually to kind of, because you broke it down and also you framed veganism in these 5 axioms, but also you referred back to the 1988 definition of veganism from the Vegan Society and showed how it relates back and all of that. So I found that really, really interesting. And the axiom that I found really interesting was the last one. I mean, they're all interesting, obviously really important, but I found that one really interesting in terms of how that one could be explored. The axiom of vicariousness.
Yes.
And I just wonder if you might say a little bit more about it, and then I've just got a few follow-up questions, if you wouldn't mind just explaining this axiom first.
Yes, that's also the most interesting to me too, because in my process of getting these actions, I had identified the first three very easily. But what I was doing in the as a method, I was just basically saying, is this enough? If I look around all the vegans that I consider ethical vegans, is there anything else that they all believe? Because if there was something that some believe and others not, that will be fourth or fifth, not a core action, another type of action. So I wanted to look at all those that it seemed that they all believe. And also, is this enough to explain the whole dimensions of the philosophy? And then I got the fourth thing. When I was something missing. I was thinking there's something missing, because with the first four, you can be a vegan, but that doesn't lead you to create the vegan world. Doesn't lead you to
Jordi,
be an activist.
Can I just cut in and say, could you just briefly say what the other four are, just in case people are listening and
Yeah. The first one is what I call the action of ahimsa, which is doing no harm is the minimum, is a moral baseline. So it's all about not doing harm, trying not to harm anyone. That I call it ahimsa. The second is the animal sentience. All animals, we consider them sentient beings, even those that we haven't discovered yet. So if you're a member of the animal kingdom, you're a sentient being for us. The third is the anti-exploitation. All exploitation harms animals. So we are against all type of exploitation, which is kind of the part of the original definition of the vegan society that developed into the final one. And the fourth one is the anti-speciesist one, that we don't discriminate against any group or individuals for the species or group they belong to. We treat them equally. And then the fifth one, the vicarious one. So with these four ones, you could just be a vegan yourself and only reject the exploitation yourself, reject your contribution to not be discriminative, treat all the animals, but doesn't lead you to mobilize others, doesn't lead you to try to stop others, doesn't lead you to build a vegan world. We needed something else. And that's why I realized, okay, I got it. Is the vicariousness principle, which says that indirect harm made by another person is also harm that we want to stop. So it doesn't need to be a direct harm, because ahimsa is a tenet that many religions use, not just the philosophy like veganism, like the Jains and the Buddhists. And the Buddhists, interestingly enough, they use it in a very different way than the Jains. The Buddhists say you should not eat an animal, you should not kill an animal, and you should not eat an animal that's been killed for you. But if it's been killed for someone else, then it's fine. And that's the difference between the Buddhists and the Jains. The Jains, they would reject all meat. The Buddhists will eat meat, some that are about school, and they would, if it's not killed for them. And that's vegans, we are more like the Jains in this, because we don't accept indirect harm. And if it's done by somebody else, we are somehow still guilty. And that's where the word vicariousness comes. It's a very legal term. So when you see it in law, you see that this law, for instance, has a vicariousness clause. That means if an employee, for instance, commit a crime, the employer is also guilty because it's called vicarious liability. So it's vicariously labeled of the guilt of the employees, because the connection of power that exists. So when we accept something that somebody gives to us, or we buy it, then we develop a connection there, and that connection brings us the guilt of whoever killed the animal or exploited the animal. And because of that, because we reject that product, so that is what leads to the vegan world, because that is what leads first to be an activist trying to make more vegans that stop using animals, but also to change the entire world where all animals are no longer exploited. So it's what leads to the vegan world. So it was the missing piece for me. And so when I find that one, I realize, okay, that is complete now. I do get it. With this, all ethical vegans I know do believe in that, because axioms are things that you believe with or without evidence. You believe them and you follow them. And so that's what made me conclude, yeah, we don't need more for the core ones. I think 5 is sufficient.
So the last one, it sounds like a call to activism.
Yeah, I think when sometimes I've been asked this question, I've written articles about this. Should all vegans be activists? I've been asked this question. Well, the vicariousness clause tells you yes, but it tells you yes, not as right now. It tells you yes, that is the inevitable conclusion. If you're a vegan, normally what happens with the axioms is that when you join the philosophy, you kind of have to learn these things. And if you don't learn, and instinctively you adopt them. And they don't happen at the same time. Normally the order I created the 5 actions is the order in where people acquire them. The first one they do is the first, the second. So the last one is the vicariousness. So is that in the process of you becoming vegan, at one point is when you realize, okay, I need to be an activist. Then you have achieved the entire 5 dimensions.
So my question around that, actually, it's funny because you answered the question which was first on my list, which was, can you be truly vegan if you're not an activist? So this is interesting, and you said you've already thought about that. And going back to that pyramid, because you were saying these 5 actions are almost like a pyramid, and you start off with the first one, but as you go up the pyramid, it actually gets more difficult.
Right.
So another part of this question that I had was, so we kind of almost evolve. Is this how we evolve as vegans, upward through the pyramid, in your view? And then if that's true, can we actually be vegan before we've reached the top of the pyramid? So if we're only practicing the first 3, is that even veganism? Are we only vegan at the 5? And how much of each one do we get away with? Like, can we be like, 50% at the first one, only like 2% at the top, but we're still vegan? And it's like, where does veganism sit within all of that, if that makes sense?
Well, that is an excellent question, and that really is an excellent question, because it does go to the essence of why did I bother to do the 5 action thing, right? Because we have a definition of veganism. Why do I bother? And my answer to this is that definitions are insufficient for philosophies. They are sufficient to describe this is a mug. This is a cylindrical thing with a handle. But definitions only tell you what things are. They don't tell you why the things are or how to use them. So if I say a mug is a container cylindrical with a handle, it doesn't tell me anything about it. It doesn't tell me why it has a handle. There are other containers that don't have it. So I realized that for philosophies, in order to understand it, you need 2 things. The definition, and that's hard. Sometimes many philosophies don't have one. And then the principles, the core principles that explain the why. And the vegan society definition doesn't tell you the why, it tells you what it is. It tells you veganism seeks to exclude all forms of animal exploitation and cruelty, but it doesn't tell you why. You need something else that justifies all those elements of the definition, and then it makes sense from a philosophical point of view. And that's the principles. So I think any philosophy should only be completely defined when you have both definitions and principles. But the definition is what makes you a vegan. So if you do follow the definition to the full, even if you haven't grasped any of the 5 or the last ones, for me, you're already a vegan. But because veganism for me is a process, it's not a state. For me, veganism begins the day you say, I'm going to adopt the philosophy of veganism. That moment, the voluntary and conscious decision to adopt the philosophy is the day you become vegan, and it never ends. Any day you'll learn more about it, you'll become better at it, and it never ends. So it's every day I'm better vegan than the day before. It's a process that never ends, but begins with your decision, because veganism is a philosophy. It has to be a philosophical decision that makes a vegan from a non-vegan. So when you choose that one as the one that it's going to guide your life, you are vegan already, even if you haven't learned the other bits. But of course, the more you learn, then you start learning about the first principle, the second, and the 5th. So you're becoming a better vegan, but you're already vegan before. So for me, that's the key. Never think that you arrived, because that's what happens. The people think, I already arrived to veganism, I can relax. No, you just starting now. You chose a path that will never end, because we always can do better. We can always avoid more exploitation, indirect, that we didn't know. We can learn about things that we didn't know. So it's never, for me, a point where I'm relaxed and say, okay, nirvana for me. No. So it's a constant progression. And if you are openly honest, you know that you never started learning the entire thing from scratch and learning perfectly well everything. You need to learn it. And that's the reasons I write books, because to help that process of veganization to vegans, to help them to get into the entire dimensions of the whole philosophy.
Yeah, I would agree with that. definitely. I think it's the starting point when you make that choice and you evolve and grow, hopefully. Yeah.
Can you tell us a little about the second axiom, sentiency?
Yeah.
During, I think it's the 13th chapter, I'm not sure, when you're talking about certain marine animals.
Mollusks, yeah.
Mollusks, yes. You are referring to the precautionary principle. And I found this very interesting. And while I was reading this, it reminded me of Tom Regan, philosopher Tom Regan, because when he was asked about the same animals and whether he consumes them or not, he said that he gives them the benefit of the doubt whenever there is no enough scientific evidence. But you're talking about the precautionary principle, and also you are giving scientific evidence about their sentience. Would you like to talk us about that?
Sure, I'm glad you asked this, because one of the reasons I wrote the book and the articles from which the book derive are often as a reaction from me to people saying, oh, it's okay to eat these animals, it's okay to have backyard eggs, all these gray areas. There's still debate within the movement. I wanted to have a say. I wanted to say my opinion about it. And essentially I wanted to say, no, if you just have to it, if you start to allow yourself to consume more things that you think you need, you probably are departing yourself from veganism. I wanted to explain why. In the case of oysters or mollusks or bivalves, there are some people that they find themselves as vegans, but they eat bivalves, mussels and oysters, and some only mussels, some only oysters, and they still say they are vegans. They call themselves ostro-vegans. And I would say, no, you're not vegan in my interpretation of what a vegan is, because they are sentient beings. And then in my article, I explained that I'm a zoologist. I'm qualified to say they are sentient more than the average ostro-vegan that accepts, having read from somewhere, that they are not sentient and eats them. So can you just accept, if you're not a specialist zoologist or psychologist or animal psychologist, that an animal is sentient just by reading it in a paper and then eat it and consume it and kind of do such a big thing? It's like, imagine a human being. Somebody says, taxi drivers are not sentient. I read it in Reddit. Well, let's eat them. Well, I just read it. Do I need to know about medicine or psychology? I read it. Makes no sense to me. That's where the precautionary principle comes into. If you're not a zoologist specialized in sentience, you have to apply the precautionary principle. And that is when the axiom as an axiom, the second axiom, becomes an alive axiom, because the actions, as I said earlier, are not things that are absolutely true. I just think that we believe to be true within the system where the axiom navigates. If it's the axioms in religions, the axioms in philosophies, the axioms in mathematical conjecture. So they are within the system, they are true. They might not be true outside the system. So for us to say that animals are sentient, unless we have studied each and every one, especially all the ones they haven't been discovered yet, how can we say that? Well, we can, because it's an axiom. It's an action of conviction. We make it a general rule that no matter who you are, we will apply a precautionary principle. And if you belong to the animal kingdom, then we give you the quality of sentience, whether you are sentient or not, and we won't consume you and things like that. There's an interesting case, which is the sponges. The sponges are, by all definitions, non-sentient, but also, although they are technically within the animal kingdom, they are not quite, because the animal kingdom has a kind of a vestibule of pre-animals, and then the animals themselves. And they are the pre-animals, that they're not quite qualified into all the characteristics of an animal. So it depends how you define the animal kingdom. You could just modify the axiom and say, rather than all the members of the animal kingdom, let's exclude the sponges. And I would say, no, why exclude them? Who consumes sponges? We don't need to consume sponges. Include them. Even if they might not be sentient, include them. So that's why in the way I worded the axiom is, should be considered sentient beings, so as opposed to we know by definitely sentient beings. But oysters and mollusks, I'm convinced 100% they're sentient. And I argue this in my book with details. From an evolutionary point of view, it makes no sense that they acquire sentience and they lost it. Sentience is a very useful thing in this world. and all mollusks derive from sentient mollusks. We know that. So the oysters were evolving from sentient mollusks. Why did they lose it? So there's many reasons, and experimental things have been done to prove they have nociceptors and other things. So I can argue it from a purely scientific point of view. But failing that, I don't need to argue. I only need to say precautionary principle. You are vegan, you apply this rule. If you voluntarily decide to eat mollusks, it's because you voluntarily decide that the principle number 2, once you learn it, doesn't apply to you. So you voluntarily step away from veganism. And if you use the word vegan, then you are misusing it. Black and white.
Indeed. Right. Well, you're a sly one, Jordi, because you know how to get your interviewers on your side. That's a very good question. I'm glad you asked that.
No, we like that. We like that. Yeah.
I'm
very honest. I would not say it wasn't true. So
I'm actually throwing questions away at the moment because we'll never get through it otherwise. I was going to ask about carnism, but we've crossed swords about that before. And I actually had a question about the book title, but we might come back to that. I don't know. I'm really glad that you mentioned the definition, because Cross said what you said. He said that the definition, which was 9 words in those days, is pretty good, but it's not well understood. And that's because it can't contain everything. It's just the starting point. And it'd be really good if the activist community would take that on board, that it's just a starting point. You can't pick out that one line from Cross and say, this is it, because it isn't. But my question is about, you mentioned, it reminded me that there are people who call themselves vegans.
Yeah.
Right? You mentioned that in the book. So can you explain what that is? And also, are there still vegans around?
Yes, unfortunately, probably from all these, I call this as a group, all these weird type of people that find themselves as vegans, and I consider them, they are not. I call them post-vegans. Somehow they become vegan and then they drop something, they become post-vegan. So I think the vegans probably are the ones more numerous from all, more than the ostro-vegans and the others, the ento-vegans, the insects, there are many of those. And there's a chapter for all of them in my book. So the vegans is the ones that they eat eggs, but of course not just eggs. They eat backyard eggs. They think that if you have a rescued hen, for instance, at the backyard, and then you eat the eggs, you're still vegan, you haven't done anything wrong. And then somebody decided to use the word vegans with double G coming from the word egg to make them believe that they're still vegans, but they do this variation. And I argue, as I do with all the other chapters, from different points of view. In this particular chapter on the X issue, I argue actually from the 5 different dimensions of veganism, because I think veganism has gateways, 5 different gateways from which would people enter: the spiritual one, the environmental one, the animal rights one, the social justice one, the health one. So I make a section for each of those. So if you're a health vegan, that is the reason why you would not eat eggs, the health, cholesterol, and all these other things. If you are a social justice vegan, eggs, like milk, are very symbolic of the oppression of female non-human animals and all those sort of things, and very symbolic of the colonialism and very symbolic of oppression system. So I argued from the point of view of all these 5 types. I'm an animal rights vegan myself, but I can see from the others because I adopted all of the 5 dimensions as well. But also I argue from a point of view of messaging, and I think that that's also important. So when you say I'm a vegan, or when you take an egg from your backyard and go to the middle of the street and you eat it, people see you eating an egg. People don't see you eating a backyard egg. People don't see you eating a rescued animal backyard. The message you send in without all the information that justifies to you that is okay for you is lost. You're just saying, eggs are edible. Please eat them without any problem. Don't listen to vegans that say they don't eat them. So you're sending the opposite message of veganism send. And that nuance that you justify yourself, which is insufficient, that you did it because you forces that makes you feel that somehow you don't have the freedom to choose whatever you want to choose. They are active and they make you want to eat more things or buy more things, consume more things. So you don't have to do it. So you can resist it. The best thing was that I had this conversation with a friend of mine who had rescued some hens and who asked me generally what to do. And I put the conversation in the book. And she was convinced that was right. That after arguing about this message, that you send in the wrong message, you don't need these eggs. There are other things you can do with the eggs. There is no anything that will help anyone by you eating the eggs. But if you do the opposite, you send the message, I'm not going to eat this egg, not even this one, not even an egg from a rescue hen. That's a powerful message that will help people to become vegan and stop using animals.
With eggs, and actually with wool, so-called wool as well, there's some vegans have a real problem with this, actually. And I've even heard of some sanctuaries selling eggs. I'm sure you've heard of those two here in the UK as well. And also recently I saw someone who runs a sanctuary decided to start making things out of the wool of the sheeps in the sanctuary and selling that in order to bring funds in. And I think sometimes with sanctuaries there's like a grey area of like, we need money and here is this byproduct. For example, they're saying, well, the sheep, because they've been so manipulated in order to create this, so much excess hair that they wouldn't normally, if they were just left to their own devices originally as they were before they were modified and all of this stuff, they wouldn't need to be shorn. But now they do need to be shorn. And it's like, well, they need to be shorn anyway. This is going to waste. Why don't I just use this to create, an income for the sanctuary? And going back to what you just said there about the eggs, for me, it's problematic because it's the relationship that you then have with the sheep. Is that they are then still in a relationship of it's very murky, isn't it? It's like, well, right. we're gaining money, so somehow you're still a commodity, and also then you're normalizing the production of so-called wool products and selling that, and so then you go, well, where's the difference then? Because you could get someone who was actually in the industry of, we're creating wool products and we're very much caring for these individuals and we treat them very well, the whole high welfare sort of, thing going on there. And then you go, well, where's the difference then? When does the industry become a sanctuary, or sanctuary becomes again part of the industry? What would you say on that? I know you've got a chapter on wool in the book as well.
Yes, I touched about that, but also I had an article that is not in the book precisely about that. So what is titled something about when a sanctuary is not really, when is not really a sanctuary. So it's just to find out that line. Because if you take the best possible farm run by farmers that they do their best, much better than anybody else, to look after the animals, and the worst possible sanctuary, and that they are neglecting them, you actually would think that the sanctuary is the farmer and the farmer is the sanctuary. You would think that. But why is the difference? The difference is in the attitude. If they are treated as sentient beings, that they have body autonomy and all the things they need to do, then there might be difficulties in manifesting that for logistics and money issue, but that makes you a sanctuary. But if you are treating them as still as your property, as still as somebody to exploit and use, even under the word of exploited for the sanctuary industry. I mean, like zoos, sometimes the zoos say, we do education, we do conservation, and we do research, as if that is a justification. That's just exploitation for education, exploitation for research, exploitation for conservation, but it could be exploitation for rescuing, exploitation for sanctuary, if it's not done with the respect that the animals require. And that in the line is very easy not to cross. So I'm often when I go to sanctuaries, I'm very uncomfortable all the time, because I see all the things and I see, oh, they crossed the line here. Oh, shit, they done this. Oh, they could have done that, because it's easy to fall into this. And it's easy for, remember, cognitive dissonance is what justified the fact that we were not vegans before. When you become vegan, you don't get rid of your cognitive dissonance. It's still in your brain. Your brain is designed with it. You just apply it to other things. So we always should be vigilant. Where is my blind spot now? And as a vegan, we're constantly vigilant. And if you don't, and you're not aware, you fall into things that you don't longer see as abuse, because you think your label is no longer the abuser, therefore what you do cannot possibly be used, and abuse or use. And I think when you start to look at it from that point of view, you would not use the wool for this. You would do, if you want to raise funds, get all the wool and get one day, open day, fundraise for it. So we're going to bury it on the ground all together. And symbolically, we will make an event of making sure nobody ever will be able to use this. So when you use the word waste, for me the word waste is the excuse. So waste, I did one event once when I was working at IFO, in which we were collecting ivory stuff. There was an amnesty. So it was illegal to have ivory because they banned the trade, but if you had some, you could give it to authorities and they would not be prosecuted. And we were one of the places where we received it. And what we did, we went to Parliament and we bought a machine and we destroyed it, making dust. And we buried it onto the ground, and I filmed the whole thing just as a point. So they are not things to be used in any way. This is dust, doesn't belong to us. We cannot use it. It goes back to the ground. So you could make a big spectacle. I did this, a bit of video. That was a fundraising thing, could help. So you could do it if that's in a way that you respect the animals until you get money. But if you don't, and even if you publicize that you're going to sell something, you're really going in the opposite direction without you even noticing. So.
Yeah, that's quite powerful, actually. That was quite powerful, the ivory and things that you said there. And just a quick follow-up question on that. What's your view on how sanctuaries can navigate things like, for example, when they try to raise funds by having open days? So for me, because then you go into that territory of like, when does a sanctuary become a zoo? When we start to like make the residents exhibits, to be seen. And, what's your view on that?
This is I visit sanctuaries that have open days, or other sanctuaries that are open all the time. So it very much depends on the circumstances of each place. So and whether they have, that's what they need to survive. Some sanctuaries have a model from supporters that allows them to get money without having to have visitors. Others don't. I work for a sanctuary, the Monkey Sanctuary, for 5 years. And we were open in summer and Easter and not the rest of the year. So that's one way to do it. We would not be able to feed the monkeys without that. So I can see the practicalities of needing to be open to the public. But I hated when we were open. I hated it so much. And I was looking forward to the moment that we closed, because that line was so close, and trying to be sure that you were not exploited, be sure that everyone, that was difficult, because sometimes you cannot do it with behaving in a way that relates to the animal, because it's in the mind of the person that comes to visit you whether that person is seeing you as a exhibit or not. So you can't help that somebody comes to you expecting to see what they see in a zoo. You can't read their minds. I gave talk. I gave, normally at the sanctuary people gave 15 minutes talk. My talks were 40 minutes because I wanted to tell people, these monkeys should not be here. This is wrong. Everything you see in here is wrong. We try to get money so we can take them back, because that was my job, to take them back to Brazil. So rather than saying this sanctuary is a nice place, come and visit us, we were saying this sanctuary is a horrible place. They shouldn't be here. We're doing what we can. Give us money so we can feed them, but give us also more money so we can take them back home. So if the attitude is right, then it doesn't really matter what happens. But if the attitude is wrong, is what then it becomes a wrong thing. So I think.
Do you think that maybe there is an educational factor there? For example, a kid walks to a vegan sanctuary and they meet a pig, depending on the circumstances, of course. If the pig can go away without being touched, if they choose to do so, and not being annoyed by the kid, for example. And maybe this little human realizes that the pig is someone sentient, someone who has feelings, who should not be killed and consumed. do you think that since most people in Western Europe are living in cities and not getting in any touch with some species, sanctuaries should play this role, or even with having these good motives, we turn our fellow animals to means to an end?
Look, this is very much the same argument that the Zoo might say for justify the education program. They say, oh, people have never seen a lion. How they gonna help a lion or a tiger is endangered species? Let's bring them so they can understand they're creatures, that they have sentience and all, and they deserve, they are magnificent. They use that argument, and I think that's a slippery slope. So you can't just use them in this way. I think if you open to the public, you have to be specifically that to educate the people of the wrongs of what's going on, as opposed to how happy this pig is. So you won't find, I've been to many sanctuaries, you won't find a picture of me at the sanctuary with a pig or things like that, with the classic thing a vegan would do when they go to a sanctuary. I can do that. For me, they are patients. For me, they are refugees. I would never go to refugee human and just go a picture with a small child. Just because I've been there, I want to show how good I am to go to refugee. I feel uncomfortable because I'm surrounded of refugees of the animal agriculture industry. These are the lucky ones. These are the ones that they manage to live longer, but they're still overweight, genetically deformed. They're still captive. They cannot mate with it. They still have all these programs. So they are not as happy as we want to think. They are much happier than those that we find in factory farms. Of course they are. But we should not get triumphalist about the fact that perhaps 0.01% of the animals of the agriculture industry live in a sanctuary a little bit longer and with a little bit more respect than the others. That is not solving the problem. But I think it's so hard to maintain them alive that I would not say it in the people that run the centers. I would not make a comment on this. I just would not be in the picture myself. But I would not make a fuss or point the finger to them because I know how hard it is. And that's what I'm saying. It's all about the intention. So in the end, how good or how bad they are is circumstantial. What makes for me the difference is the intention. If these people that run the center really care about and do that much as they can, that for me is a wonderful place. If these people don't, these people start to get used to the whole thing, these people start to think more about the visitors than the actual animals, then they're getting away from the original thing. And anybody can easily get away, and then we go back if they realize what they're doing. So sanctuaries are complicated places, but if you look at it in the way I look at it, they are not places to visit. They are refugee camps. That's what they are. You will treat them differently.
Yeah, actually, you might be aware of Vine Sanctuary, Jordi. It's often held up as a very almost like a role model sanctuary because of the way Vine runs. Patrice Jones and her team run that sanctuary in a very multi-species community. It's done in a way where it's not run in a very anthropocentric way, like we are the humans, we know best. Like Patrice is so very deliberate about listening to the residents, and she won't just have people turning up to visit either. It's like if you go with an appointment and you go to help and to do some work there as as someone who's actually giving some care in some way. And I think that's just a really good way that, I don't know if you're familiar with it, but I think it's a really good, they have a very good ethos there in the way they run the sanctuary there.
For me, the test that tells me, okay, that's probably right or that's probably wrong, is this a vegan sanctuary? Is it run by vegans? Once it's run by genuine vegans, then you know, if they are vegans, that the whole thing will end up being right, even if the logistics don't allow them to do it properly and they still might learn it. But if they are not run by vegans, or they still sell animal products, even if they are run by vegans, they have a shop, they still sell animal products, then you know, okay, that. How can I trust that they're going to be looked after properly if they still haven't really perceived the actual philosophy behind why you have to look after them properly? So,
although vegans saying no becomes an issue at times as well, and that can create a whole other show to talk about.
Yeah. How many shows are we're going to go? Funny you were saying about sanctuaries. They are complicated issues, as you say. There is actually a picture of me with a turkey from Eden Farmed Animal Sanctuary, but I swear it was her idea, because I was just sat there. I was kind of crouched down. She approached me, and I was a bit reluctant for the very reasons that you said. But she wanted a cuddle, so that's my excuse for it.
No, I do exactly what you do. So I just be around. If someone approaches me, asks me for an interaction, I oblige, of course, but they have to be in their terms. So.
Yes, absolutely.
That's the
so
best
I
way,
take
definitely.
it from your answer then that you're not going to go with Tobias Leonhardt's latest nonsense of this kind of symbiotic relationship where effectively vegans can be free-range farmers essentially and call it vegan.
No, of course not. So that's why I write books. I write books because I see these things happening. I hear these things. I see all these variations of the concept, and I understand why that happens, because as a movement we grew, and because we grew, more points of view come in. But if there is nothing in the movement itself that prevents it to be completely diluted and lose our integrity, we, like many movements, will end up being something else. So I felt that my books were my way to put some scaffolding inside the movement from which you can prevent a little bit of delusion.
Absolutely. I mean, I know exactly what you think, but it is very worrying when you've got somebody who's got the backing of somebody else who is very powerful in the movement going around saying that all use is not wrong.
But that's an animal welfare position, as you know, and animal welfare has been contaminated animal rights so much. So,
in the book, you have different chapters giving info and answering questions about certain aspects of non-human animal exploitation. For example, leather, zoos, eggs, and it seems to me that almost every chapter corresponds to a single issue campaign, or it could correspond to a single issue campaign. And you had you have played a very important instrumental role in several real single issue campaigns with great results, bullfighting, for example, or the Hunting Act. So, and you are an abolitionist vegan, and you write books about it. So you want to see the end of all oppression. How do you feel about single issue campaigns? Because sometimes within the movement are seen as welfarist or not properly vegan, or just a step to something bigger. What are your thoughts on that?
I wrote an article about this, as you would expect. So I'm in favor of single issue campaigns if they are abolitionist. I'm against single issue campaigns if they are reformist. I'm in favor vegan bigger picture campaigns if they are vegan and abolitionist. I'm against if they are reformist and gradualist. So the form of single or plural is irrelevant, is what you do in those campaigns. I work for animal welfare organizations many times without being an animal welfare person or actually contributing to animal welfare campaigning, because any campaign I chose to support and work inside the animal welfare organization was an abolitionist campaign. So I went to the League Against Cruel Sports, that is an animal welfare campaign, but I work against hunting and banning stuff, not gradual change. And so for me, I made it compatible to navigate between animal welfare, animal protection, animal rights when it's convenient, as long as I didn't lose my north, that I knew that I was working for abolition, not reform, and therefore anything such as bans and things like that, I think is okay, because it's essentially, we are in a journey, and the journey starts here and ends out in the vegan world. But between here and there are many obstacles, mountains, rivers, craves, things that we have to overcome. And we cannot reach the end if we just look at the bigger picture without looking at our feet, Because we then suddenly fall into a hole because we haven't looked at the feet. And we cannot get to the end either if we only look at the feet and we don't know which direction we're going. We have to constantly look down, look up, look down, look up, look down, look at the bigger picture, do bigger picture stuff, and then do specific things to overcome that obstacle, to overcome the other obstacle, and then look at the bigger picture. It's the combination, bigger picture and single issue campaign, which for me is the formula that works, because it's the one that, philosophically speaking, has all the elements necessary not to get lost and to be able to overcome the obstacles. And the other things, tactically, for instance, if you're a good traveler, traveling to the vegan world, you will learn that if there's 2 or 3 mountains in front of you, you better take that one there because you know that the slope is more negotiable than this one over here. You can have middle-size decisions, not just you on steps. You can look at a little bit further, but not to the end, and still make good decisions that will be tactically and strategically better to get to the vegan world. If you're a good traveler, you'll know how to navigate the world. So you can just have very small single issue things like closing this particular zoo, middle issue things, banning all zoos, and then the bigger picture in the vegan world. But you don't have to sacrifice one with the other. We can do both. I'm the living proof. I can do both because I do both. And I closed 5 zoos, I prosecuted 5 hunters, I banned bullfighting in Catalonia, and I wrote 2 books about veganism in the vegan cause.
So everything is in the context then?
Yeah, it's all on the nature of the campaign. Is it abolitionist? Is it not? Is it reformist?
Because single issues can be abolitionized.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
One thing I learned about the book, I didn't realize that you once worked for CAPS, Captive Animal Protection Society, but you were focusing on aquaculture at the time, and you were kind of an investigator.
Yeah.
You mentioned in one of your
well, more than I didn't work for them, I was freelancer. They hired me. So just to clarify,
right.
So I was not an employee as I was for others. I was hired by them to do investigations. So.
Yeah. Okay. And because you mentioned it in one of your veganfortheanimals.com ones as well about the 5 advances that ended up backfiring and everything.
Yeah.
So, do you want to say anything more about your fish work, as we could call it, fish's work?
Well, yeah, it's funny because I have a tendency through life, and my brain architect is responsible for that, of becoming very obsessed about the subjects I work for, to the point that I concentrate a lot of time and energy, and I end up being nicknamed like the Bossman for a while, the Hunty man. And there was a time I was nicknamed the fishes man, because I dedicate a few years of investigating fishes. But more, I didn't investigate aquaculture as such. I investigate public aquaria. Captive Animal Protection Society, now called Freedom for Animals, is an anti-captivity organization. That's the single issue. It's not an anti-agriculture organization. So they look at public aquaria. So, and that's what I did. I did undercover investigations on Scottish and English aquaria. I went to many aquaria with cameras, concealed cameras, and I got information, I wrote reports. And one of the things more noticeable, there have been many investigations after mine, but mine was the one that set up the principles, because I kind of discovered some behaviors that were useful for campaigners years after to identify how much fishes suffer in aquaria. And that would be applicable in aquacaria or public aquaria. So you know that stereotypic behavior, which is this repetitive behavior like pacing, head bobbing, we find this in zoos very easily, and other farms like fox farms and things like that, pacing up and down, going in circles. People assume for many years that was only found in mammals and birds. And then people start to discover it in reptiles as well. And I thought, well, if we all sentence, it's going to happen with fishes as well. So when I went undercover, having filmed entire aquaria for hours sometimes, and then I analyzed the tapes, and I identified the same behaviors we see in a cat pacing, in a fish going from left to right in the tongue. And I described some new behaviors that I had to give them a name that were clearly stereotypic, but nobody had given them a name before. And then, of course, once I described them in my report, people could go back years later and try to see them again and then show, this, because this behavior is the tip of the iceberg. It's just some animals, some individuals, and some species are more prone to show they suffering through stereotypic behavior, while others, they keep it inside. They suffer equally, but they don't manifest it in the same way. But what I could see, it was such a good exercise for me to realize there is no reason to treat fishes differently than mammals and birds. It's no different at all. Because I would go to a tank, and my eyes could see things that after a while training myself to do it, that most people would not see. But what I knew the behavior was trying to get, I would go to a tank, and there might be all the same species, all of 300 fishes, and I could see that one from all the 300. That one is the one that's going to do a stereotypic behavior in a minute. And he did it. So somehow I could read them enough to know that particular individual express it more, has got the trauma for captivity is worse for that one. So it makes you realize, of course, they are individuals. I could see them. They're not going left to right. That one is going the other way around. That one is looking at the reflection of the image. That one is completely different than the others because it's an individual. It reminds you what we do in animal rights, that we consider all the individuals matter, no matter who they are. And so my study of fishes helped me to reinforce that view that I already had with other animals into other species. So that's why I don't go beyond. I don't stop invertebrates because I did my studies on wasps. For me, there is no. I can see the same thing in insects. I can see the same thing. That's why it wasn't difficult for me to go and talk about mollusks and the oysters because I have no barrier for me. For me, I understand it as what it is, not as a cultural imposition of what a behavior similar to us. I look at it as the way they would behave, how they would suffer, and they will experience the same problems. Captivity has three main issues that cause suffering and harm. One is the reduction of space. Any captive situation, you have less space. The second is reduction of the stimuli. You have less things happening to you. You have a brain that evolved to have a particular stimuli. You have fewer of those, and a reduction of choice. You have less things you have to choose and use your brain to choose them. And when that happens for a long time, you get crazy. Zoochosis, that's what happens. No matter the species, whether you're fish, whether you're reptile, and I could see it. Literally, I could see it in filming and write about it by me going and watch the captive fishes and suffering as they would be suffering if they were lions in the zoo.
Obviously, that was the large aqua prisons, right? But if you think about the stereotypical fish bowl, that's almost designed to create stereotypies, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Because of the
It's designed to hide it. It's designed to make you think that it's going in circles because it's the nature of the ball. But it would go in circles if it was a square, because that would be a circling. I call this one circling. Circling is a type of.
And then you get all the myths, don't you, around that, like, oh, fishes have only got a 3-second memory, so they don't remember anything anyway, and you get all that rubbish around it. I love the fact that you talking like this about fishes. I've got a question about insects actually, because again, you've got a chapter in the book about insects, Jordi, and thank you for writing about insects, because I think that's brilliant. And I think it only seems recently that the movement has started to include fishes, but definitely we don't really talk about insects, which saddens me quite a lot. But hence I'm really glad that you wrote about them. I also had a very early experience with a bee, and I believe you had an early experience with a wasp. And yeah, I've got a fascination with insects, and I like you see them as just as important as anyone else, and spend a lot of time trying to help them and make sure that they are being as respected as others. But I think in the movement, obviously, it's not something we really talk about a lot. And I just wonder, in your opinion, do you feel like we should spend more time advocating for insects, or is this just like, for most non-vegan, pre-vegan people, just so far off their radar that right now there's no point even? Or do you think we should start to more talk about insects?
We should, and I preach what I said. I had National Animal Rights Day that is celebrated once a year in different parts of the UK in the world. Last time I was at Bournemouth, I gave my speech only about insects. So I wanted to make the point that on the day of the animal rights, I would only talk about insects to precisely compensate the fact that nobody else is talks about it. And I gave the numbers. If you just look at numbers, if you're interested in numbers, there are many utilitarians in the movement. Well, if you're interested in numbers, insects is the only thing you have time to campaign. The numbers involved is quite trillions as opposed to trillions of vertebrates. So if it's just numbers, they are the most. But also the distance between what it should happen to them and what it doesn't happen to them is the biggest. Because other animals that are suffering factor farm, at least there is people around that know it's wrong, and there is people around that sympathize with the problem, even if they don't do anything about it. Insects, people don't even see it. People don't even notice they exist. They don't even notice the suffering. They were born, they die, nobody noticed that they've been there. I think that chasm, that's what really pushed me towards veganism. My first experience I had when I was doing my PhD in wasp that really completely changed my direction of traveling and ended up me being vegan years later was with a wasp. If we have time, do we have time to tell you this story?
Well, we're over time, but I mean, what we're going to do, gang? Carry on for a bit, or what?
Yeah, a little bit. Just, maybe 5-10 minutes.
Okay, I'll tell you this story because it is what changed my view of the world, but I think it is a perfect example of what you just said. An insect really changed my view. And because a tiny insect changed my view, I think it's a good tactic to do more campaign against insects because insects have more power to change the view. If you suddenly respect an insect, of course you will respect a mammal. But if you only respect a primate, perhaps you don't respect the dog. So if you respect the smallest, you will respect the biggest. So it's a good tactic to educate respect for insects. What happened to me, I was doing a PhD in wasps. So I'm an ethologist, I study animals in the wild, not in laboratory. So I had to find a wasp nest, and I found one. And I had to go and approach them with a note to take notes. But it was my first attempt to do this in the middle of my 5-year degree of zoology. And I was very nervous because obviously they sting you. And I knew this genus I was studying is called Polistes. They have guards at the entrance of the nest. These guards are there to prevent anybody that is not from the colony coming in and raise the alarm if there is an intruder. And they take turns. It's a job. It's not a caste. So today is my turn. Tomorrow is your turn. So I knew I had to pay attention to the guard because the guard is the one that would raise the alarm if they felt that I was a threat. And it would do it by releasing a pheromone that says, alarm, alarm, go out, sting this guy. So they would move the wings a little bit. It would give me a quarter of a second to react. And then I had to run like crazy if I saw that movement. So my attention was completely on the guard in the wings. And suddenly...
With a white flag?
Well, I had my notebook. Then I thought my notebook is like a white flag. But at the very least, if they attack me, if I'm fast enough, they will crash against the notebook and I have time to run. Later on, I discovered... I
thought you were going to say you wrote a note to the wasps to just say, look...
No. I use it as a shield, as a spontaneous shield. Later on, I discovered they only chase you for 6 meters, so which is quite good. But I didn't know at the time.
Can you give this to the Queen, please? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I was super nervous, as you can imagine, no experience about this. And suddenly the guard sees me. I can tell because looks at me. They have a face that turns like humans. And then look at me and he starts to smell me with the area. And my heart was like crazy. Shit, I'm going to be completely stung here. And then she looked up and down at me and just relax and let me go. So he completely judged me right. My demeanor and my behavior was read completely right and understood that I was not going to harm them. So it then completely blew my mind that this was that everybody hates, everybody killed them because nobody thinks there's anything good about wasps. Had judged me so well, much better than any human I had met before, because I grew up in Catalonia in a fascist regime with all humans was telling me, speak another language, you're not, Jordi is an illegal name. Everything was been receiving an oppression from humans. And suddenly 1-inch individual invertebrate animal said, no, you're quite all right. You can watch if you want. And that blew my mind, how intelligent that 1-inch individual is. And then suddenly that they decided I can't be just a zoologist. I have to be an animal protectionist. From that day on, my task was to protect and help animals. And it was a wasp that told me that lesson. So, that is the power of the insects. They are so small, they're treated so unfairly that when you see them, when you see who they are, a whole world opens to you.
Yeah. I love that. I love this.
I think it's the campaign thing. You said we need a campaign, but I mean, if you're thinking like Animal Aid or Viva, they're never going to have a campaign about insects, because they're thinking, if we go on to Piers Morgan, he's just going to take the piss, right? So so it's going to be very difficult from a campaigners group, especially a national group, to take on board that, I would think.
Yeah, but you're right. But it should be something that we do as a vegans to is almost tune ourselves in the right state of mind. We should constantly, if we might not want to do it as a campaign, at least we need to do it when we talk about with each other in groups and demonstrations or National Animal Rights Day, to remind us all the time about the insects. And because I think it would, I mean, there are people protecting bees. There are particularly insects that do have people campaigning for them. But the point is, when you tell people that we don't eat this product because there is carmine that comes from a beetle, that's more powerful to say, I don't need my cousin, the chimp. That people will say, yeah, I don't either. So the message when you say, I do my best not to eat a beetle I never met before, and I even don't know how it looks like, that tells you the strength of the belief. And then that communicates much better what we all about, and what we say, that we don't discriminate.
I agree with that, I agree with that.
And you did say actually in the book, Jordi, that there are people who consume insects who consider themselves vegan.
Yeah, they call entomovegans. Yeah,
entomovegans. Yeah, can you tell us more about that?
I can think of another name for them.
People have been eating insects forever. Probably people ate insects first before they ate any vertebrate. So that is part of humanity, eating insects. Many cultures still eat them. But the entomvegans are the ones that they think they're vegan. They think they become vegan, and that they consider that it's okay to incorporate some sentient beings in their diet. Because whatever reasons, they might say they are not sentient enough. They might say that they need this protein from insects because they know so many people that have died if they didn't eat an insects. I mean, they can justify their decision in any way that I will always find it ridiculous. But it boils down essentially to considering different sentient beings of different categories. That's one of the things that we don't do. We treat them all. The fourth principle of anti-speciesism prevents you to classify insects as a lesser sentient being than the others. So if you are eating insects, you're in breach of the fourth principle. You're no longer vegan in my book.
Hear, hear.
Indeed. Now, you've actually got an invite here, Jordi, if I can find it. There we go. So this is Dennis Nealis from Sentient Rights Island, and he also coordinates with me the speakers for something called Failure Vegan, which is a vegan festival. And nice. So you're being invited to speak for next year. So
great.
I'll speak to you about this.
I love Dennis has been how organised Dennis is being, getting in there early. Love that, Dennis. Well done.
You even got the postcode and everything. So,
I'll be glad. If I don't have any commitment, and I don't think I have for this particular time, I am glad. I just send me the information in any way you can, and I'll deal with it.
Yeah, and going back to the sanctuary thing, just to wrap up, perhaps, is that Nella, Wendy, and I are gonna probably do an animal rights show during my Christmas thing, and we're going to try and feature sanctuaries and all those kind of issues that we've talked about today. We'll try and explore then as well, won't we? So look out for that on Christmas Day. I normally do a long, I think I've done a 12-hour one, but it won't be that long this year. But this is really for people who are isolated, vegans who are isolated, and the idea is to give them somewhere where they can get away from the family who are taking the mick out of them and all that, and tune into the vegan space. But we're going to work on that as soon as this show's over. So that's,
how many years have you been doing that now, Roger? It was during COVID, wasn't it? The first one?
Possibly. Yeah, I guess it's 4.
You've done a few now. Is it maybe 4 or 5? Maybe even 5.
I've done it on World Vegan Day sometimes as well. So
yeah, I've done quite a few Christmas ones now.
Yeah, I did a 6-hour one, an 8-hour one, and I did a 10-hour one.
12-hour. Yeah, there was a really long one.
Yeah, there was I think the 10-hour, the one that was scheduled for 10 hours went to 12 hours, I think. I remember.
Yeah.
In fact, Jordi, if you remember last year, you sent me a little clip,
Yeah,
which I showed. That's right. Yeah. So
I remember.
Oh, yeah. You were doing little clips last year. That's right. That's right.
I was. Yeah, I'll probably do that again. I could probably recycle them. I would think,
Yeah,
or-
I don't remember what I said, but probably is applicable to all Christmases.
Paint print pics. What's the matter with you?
Just going back to that, I know we haven't got time to like spend loads of time on this now, but Jam in Shed is talking about the 6-month extinction and how insects are really in decline as well due to choices that we make, light, water, and sound pollution as well. So I think sometimes, going back to what you were saying right at the start, Jordi, about veganism being about no, and often we think about that with the definition as well, that we're refusing to consume or refusing to buy products that are tested on. We didn't even get into the testing, which I've written loads of notes about, but hopefully another time, about the testing, research, all of that stuff. But this speaks to another thing I think that vegans also need to be concerned about, in that there are other choices that we might make that are not really about whether we're consuming or complicit in the purchasing or commodifying. That speaks to what Jam and Shed is saying about decline in or light pollution, noise pollution, water resources, the way we might be living our lives in that affect the immediate environment and that are perpetuating climate crisis and things like that. But which I think often people, and I know you are not one of those people, Jordi, because you talk about the 5 gateways and how veganism, is very expansive and includes environmental issues. But I think a lot of vegans kind of don't really go into that scope. They think it's all about like avoiding the consumption of products and things. But I think there are more for us to think about. Like you said, that journey is very expansive. And I think that's a big part of it, what Jamin Shed is talking about here. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, and I had conversations with him before, and he and I have in common this understanding of consumerism is an issue, is a problem, and we often assume, we in capitalist society we consume and that's it. Well, we should just assume that it's going to be there forever. We need to deal with it, and I think he has that view too. So.
Yes.
Right. Nella, have you got a final thing or what?
Yes, I have. I have several, but there is no time for all of them. I just wanted to ask you, you are a zoologist, an author, vegan, animal rights activist, whistleblower. Which of those labels is, if one, is more important to you? How do you self-identify?
I have many labels. I have many identities, and I don't throw them away. When I have a new one, I keep the other ones. I just pile them on top of each other. So I'm all of them, but there's always one at a time that is my favorite. It's like a pajamas that I try to use a particular time more than other pajamas, and the vegan pajama is the one now. So the identity that defines myself better, the kind of person I am at this moment, is the vegan one. But there's a new pajama I'm buying now. Probably that's going to be revealed in my new book.
Another book, Jordi.
Well, I'm planning to continue writing books because I think, to be honest, one of the reasons behind this book publication was the realization that things that are today with AI and all the things that are happening, it will be so easy that somebody pushes a button and anything I've written in the cloud disappears. And I want things written physically in a piece of paper so they can be put in a library and then some archaeologist finds it some years later. So I want to write more of the stuff I've already written online in book form. So I want to do more book writing because I think in the future with AI, books and people talking will be more valuable for communication because everybody else will assume it's fake and only something that is physical and a person talking to you will gain credibility. So I'm working in that direction. So I have some ideas for several books, but there is one particular book that might take a few years I want to write that's built on another identity. At one point I will start to defend, but the veganism identity is the one that for me it represents most of who I am, and that's why I wrote these two books. These two books are my way to coming out to the world as a vegan, really. So
You've dangled a little pajama carrot
second
there,
book
haven't
is,
you? Get us going.
I think that's the shocking revelation of the evening, that you're a pajama wearer.
no, well, that was 100% metaphorical. The last time I wore a pajama was in 1982. So.
We'll believe you, won't we, Wendy? We'll believe you, won't we now?
We'll believe, yeah. We'll believe you. But no, I like bananas in pajamas.
The book is,
Sorry,
the book is fresh out of the press. Where can people find it?
The book can be bought now at lulu.com. Probably at one point it will be able. You can buy it anywhere, because, for instance, Amazon, what it does is buys all the books and then it sells them, whoever publishes them. So Amazon will buy it, mine, from lulu.com, and then sell it for a different price. That will happen at one point. But at the moment now is lulu.com. You just go to this bookstore section, do the search for vegans, and then you have there both the paperback and the ebook version available to purchase them.
On a serious note, Jordi, do you encourage people not to use Amazon?
Yes.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, for me, this book I published it myself, and there was a whole experience for me try to do it in the most ethical way possible. But it didn't cost me anything not to consider Amazon at all. So I completely discarded from the beginning, and then I had to look at the alternative. From all those that I could find, Lulu is the one I found was the closest to the ideal for a vegan like me, but it wasn't perfect, because Lulu, like Amazon, they are print-on-demand systems. So if somebody in Japan orders a book, it will be a print in Japan that prints it, as opposed to the print I choose here. And there's no way you can guarantee that a printer will have the same ink than the printer I'm using here. So it's impossible just to have it completely.
It's a neat circle. So you get them from Japan and they're wearing pajamas. So,
exactly.
So
we do it. We do what we can, and we live our life physically and metaphorically. So,
indeed. So I'd like to thank everybody for sticking with us, and I'd like to thank our special guest, of course. It's been a great chat, Jordi. You're welcome back anytime, especially when you've got a new book out.
And some new pajamas.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, we insist next time you've got to be wearing pajamas.
Oh, can we just do a pajama show?
I need to get a vegan pajama with vegan logos or something. That would be interesting. So.
Right.
That needs to happen.
Folks.
Thank you so much, Jordi. That was a really, really good conversation. Really enjoyed that.
Me too. I loved it. And thank you for giving the opportunity to talk about my book.
Cheers, everyone. Bye for now.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.